Street fights are very common, but the good thing is they don't have to be. Nowadays, the internet gives you plenty of examples to learn from. In this video, I want to share with you 3 of what I believe to be are the most common observations we can take away from any street fight. Stick around. One of the first things I can tell you about street fights is 99.9% of the time they're completely avoidable. Most street fights take place between 2 people who could have walked away, who were with the wrong people at the wrong time at the wrong place. I'm not saying every street fight is avoidable. I'm just saying that most are. I've told so many young men that I mentor in this community that there are so many other ways to go out into this world and be tough and be a man without getting into a street fight. I think back on every fight that I was in when I was young, and in every one of those situations, I could have walked away and it didn't even need to happen. Most of the time, it's people's pride that drags them into those situations and keeps them there. I think sometimes we as people don't consider the spoils that's involved. If you're gonna fight for something, if you're gonna take a stand for something, there needs to be some spoils. And the problem with a street fight, even if you win, is there's really no spoils in it, only implications, bad ones at that. I tell young men and women this all the time, and I could say it to even the older ones as well. If you've got fight and aggression on the inside of you, some people just do. Some people just want to fight. There's so many other positive ways to do it. Join a boxing gym, MMA gym, join the wrestling team. Get involved in jiu-jitsu, grapple with some people, get in a self-defense class. There's so many ways for you to be able to go and fight and exert that energy without going out here and potentially facing some terrible implications. I've said this before in other videos. If I have to fight somebody, it's because they gave me no other choice, and that's how it should always be. Getting in a street fight doesn't make anybody tough. Anybody can get into a street fight. They may win, they may lose, but to me, a tough person is somebody who is disciplined, who trains, who is a person of character, who is dedicated to all the right things. I also want to talk about how childish a great majority of this stuff is. I see videos of grown men fighting at sporting events all the time, standing up and fighting in the stands, swinging at each other from one seat to the next. These dudes need to grow up, man. If you have to fight, you have to fight. But I just believe that a great majority, 99.9% of these street fights that we're seeing on the internet, all could have been avoided. The second observation that we can take away from a lot of street fights is that people are getting knocked out because they will not learn that you can't stand in somebody's face. You can't do it. This is a very common example and a perfect example of what not to do, because this is how people get knocked out. The only time 2 people who are getting ready to fight should stand face to face is if they are promoting a sanctioned event. And there are even times when one fighter can't even keep his hands to himself in those situations. You should never let somebody get in your face. You need to either keep them at bay or act. But if you let them in your space, you're asking for it. I'm part of a community on Instagram, and we share videos with each other privately. And a lot of these videos I couldn't even show on YouTube, but I have seen so many knife attacks from up close, so many sucker punches. I've seen some terrible, terrible encounters with people up in each other's faces with blades. I can't show it, but in just a few moments, the guy in the blue is going to pull out a box cutter and strike this guy in the face. But unfortunately, this is a common thing with street fight footage. And once again, it's pride and ego causing 2 people to get in each other's face. It's a thing of dominance. A third characteristic of street fight footage that I have seen is that a great majority of these fighters appear to have little to no training, which is not an abnormal thing because it's untrained fighters that are out here trying to test themselves. Anyone who's trained in boxing or martial arts will know that this is a common stance and position of an untrained fighter. That being said, there are some street fighters who know how to throw hands, and just because somebody is untrained does not mean they're not dangerous. My point is simply this: people who are trained are less likely to get in street fights because, number one, they've gotten it out of their system. They've learned about what they're capable of. They're going to be more gentle and calm as a result, and they have a lot of good foundational education with regards to how to avoid street fights altogether. But of all the street fights that I'm watching on the internet, if any of these guys encountered a good boxer, a good wrestler, someone well-versed in something like Muay Thai, would get hurt just by the way they fight and carry themselves. So I do believe if you're getting good realistic combatives training and you're training in stuff that's real and not bullshito, as we call it, you're gonna have an edge if one of these guys puts you in a situation where you have to fight. Don't think just because you're trained that that's gonna guarantee your victory, but it will put you one step ahead. But I will say this though, as a word of caution. I have seen guys who are untrained bring a ferocity to the table that a lot of trained people don't bring. And I'm not talking about the whole seeing red thing. I'm talking about a sense of savagery and killer instinct, a sense of commitment. So if you're trained, that's great, but know that there's a certain edge that needs to come with it out here in the real world. So street fights for the most part are avoidable, and that's a good thing. If you are with the right people, at the right place at the right time, and you don't put yourself in sketchy situations and you're not driven by ego and pride, you're probably going to stay out of 99.9% of these things. But never let anybody get in your face. There at least needs to be a barrier between you and them so that you're in position to cover your head or respond if need be, but don't get in their face. If somebody insists on getting in your face, you're going to have to act, because you can't simply just let them stand there and get close. You put yourself in too much danger. And the simple fact that a great majority of the street fights we see on the internet are between untrained people is very telling as to who's getting in fights out here. The stakes are too high and there's too much risk. There's too much that can go wrong. Almost no good can come from it. So I wanted to create this video to raise awareness, to keep you out of street fights, and to let you know that it shouldn't be too hard. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you believe are some common observations we can take away from your average street fight? Take care.